The story starts with a man beating up a child which seems to be his daughter while her brother stands still unable to help her due to his fearful thoughts. The man drags the girl by her hair and pulls her outside, throwing her into a shack while she apologizes repeatedly and asks help from her brother. The girl's left eye seems to be covered with a bandage. Later on, her brother rushed to the shack to check on her but found the shack empty. He started hysterically running around the town searching for her and finally found her somewhere sobbing and looking at him. Her bandages were slightly loose which revealed her demonic red eye. He apologized to her telling her that he should have done something, but she wanted him to go back or he will get punished for helping her. He shook his head and told her that they're going to escape. They ran off while the sky was raining and entered a small shelter to get covered from rain and coldness. While they hide, a man appeared to them giving them a helping hand with a soft smile as the boy passes out. Later on he starts to wake up feeling himself carried by that man while his sister walks along holding the man's hand. They enter his town where a lot of smiths make swords. They arrive at his house and as he opens the door his daughter runs to him and hugs him tightly. The girl shifted her head to look behind her father asking about the two kids. He told her that he found them lost outside and he's planning to foster them and keep them in his family. The girl felt happy and ran outside towards them introducing herself as Shirayuki. As the boy refers to himself as Jinta she shifts her head and looks at the small girl who looked very scared and embarrassed but finally introduces herself as Suzune. The girl chuckles at them telling them that they're family from now on. Later that night as Jinta tries to sleep he wakes up and refers to the man who was cleaning his sword as Madoharu. Jinta asks him if he was a samurai but he replies that he's the guardian for the maiden's shrine. The next day the kids went outside to the nearby river to play and swim. They seemed to have a lot of fun especially with the poor little girl who got abused in her past family. Once they were done for the day and by sunset they all started walking back home. While they walk back home and as Jinta carries Suzune on his back he asks Yuki about her mother. She tells him that her mother was the maiden who stays in the shrine all the time to serve the fire's god and she's limited to see specific amount of people only to keep the purity of her sanctity. 3 years later, Madoharu was training Jinta with wooden swords to make him become better in duels. Jinta was still weak and clumsy. He lost once again in front of Madoharu and got depressed that he doesn't seem to be getting any better. But he bent over to cheer him up telling him that practice makes perfect and nothing stays the same forever. Jinta thanks him while he leaves as Yuki runs after him wanting to give him the sword so he wouldn't forget it. Yuki goes to Jinta and tries to cheer him up, but Suzune wakes up and walks to them, making Jinta embarrassed. They grab his hands and invite him to have breakfast with them. Later on as it seems Jinta had grown up sitting in the maiden's shrine with his sword laid next to him and meeting with the town's elders. The maiden started thanking him for his hard epic efforts of killing demons to protect the maiden and the town. After that one of the elders explained that the demon's age can go over 1,000 years, but the legend says that eating a shrine's maiden fresh liver can grant immortality, and that's basically why they try to attack their town and kill their maiden. He then mentioned that the past maiden was attacked and eaten by a demon but only got stopped by Madoharu's sacrifice. The maiden explained that they might be coming for the ancestors' enchanted sword, which had been passed down through generations. The sword was legendary and contained epic powers. The old man explained that the sword was made by a very rare iron ore that never rusts for thousands of years. Suddenly one of the younger present guys laughs and tells the older man who is also his father to calm down because the maiden now has two guardians referring to himself and Jinta. The guy was called Kiyomasa. They finally ended the meeting and everyone started to leave but Jinta stayed. The maiden asked him if everyone had left and he confirmed for her. She got out of her shrine asking to drop the formalities. Jinta was flabbergasted as if he had seen a big titty goth GF. But in fact it was Shirayuki. She was the maiden now just like her mother. He wanted to keep up the formalities but she asked him with a blush to at least call her by her name when they were alone. And Jinta finally agreed and smiled at her. Yuki then tells him that Suzune had slipped inside her shrine and slept under her chair. Jinta was shocked and went to look for her. It seems that Suzune never grew up even after all these years and they were aware of her being a demon. Jinta told Yuki that if someone found out that she slipped in her shrine no one would care if she got executed because this was disrespectful for the shrine. He started petting and waking her up. She wakes up and looks at him in excitement happy to see him again. Suddenly he feels someone coming and tells Suzune to hide but she tells him that she knows a secret exit and runs towards it. The old guy entered the shrine and called for the maiden to talk to her about something and asked Jinta to leave respectfully. Yuki confirmed and gave him the rest of the day off. While Jinta leaves the shrine he gets a flashback when they were younger. Yuki told him that she will be the next maiden and they will never be able to meet again. But Jinta didn't give up and told her that he will become the best swordsman to be her guardian so he can meet her all the time. Meanwhile, there are two demons foreseeing something in the future and it seems that it relates to Suzune. Back at home where Jinta sits down where Suzune was having a nap, she wakes up and runs towards him happy that he doesn't have to go to guard the shrine today. As she sits down, Jinta informs her that her bandage was getting loose again, but she fixed it. He started petting her and they sat there chilling, but suddenly the maiden, Yuki, had managed to stall and leave the shrine for the rest of the day after taking permission from the eldest boss. Suzyun asked Jinta if they would all have breakfast together. Jinta had no other choice but to agree. They sat down and started having breakfast together while Suzyun mocks him for his poor making of food. He scolded Suzyun lightly, threatening to punish her, but Suzyun and Yuki knew he would never be able to hurt her. Suzyun left her bangs off her forehead so he can flick it, but he couldn't have a heart to do it. Then the girls started chuckling together at him. After they finished breakfast, Yuki and Jinta were going out on a date to spend some time since they both basically had the work day off. Suzyun was so happy they were going out together, and she was very happy that he's happy. Everyone was shocked to see Jinta walking with such a beautiful girl, but they never knew who she was. They arrived at a restaurant and the female owner rushed to him asking him who he was hanging out with, but he told her that she was a friend of his coming from a different town, not wanting to reveal her identity. She took their order and they started eating and started ranting about her parents' death. Later on, they went to the river they used to play and swim in back when they were young. Yuki started talking to Jinta about her life, telling her that she has to get married to Kiyomasa because she has got to keep her bloodline going before she dies and lose and end up like her mom. Even though she's actually in love with Jinta, she also told him that she wanted to escape with him somewhere far, but she knew he'd not like to take such a route. Jinta was not surprised by her statement. He told her that the reason he was working on his skills and training was to protect the maiden, and not Yuki. He chose to grow up being a guardian to stay all the time with her, and if he decided to escape with her, he basically wasted his hard work training for all these years, so he encouraged her to continue with her marriage. The next morning at the shrine where everyone had gathered, the maiden reveals that there were 2 demons spotted in the forest, so she ordered Jinta and go deal with them, giving him her blessings. Jinta accepts and stands up, then walks out of the shrine. Kiyomasa stops Jinta and grips him by his collar, angry. How could he accept to let Yuki marry him even though he loved her? Jinta told him that it was for the best of the town. Kiyomasa called him crazy and let him go. After that, Jinta had already gone to the forest to search for the demons. Suddenly hearing a loud scream, he turned towards the sword and covered his face with the sword, only to get attacked by a bulked-up demon. He had broken the sword's sheath. He asked the demon that he heard that they were 2. He answered him saying that the other one had already slipped to the town. Jinta didn't want to waste any time. He dashed towards the demon and tried to attack him, but his skin was very tough. The demon attacks him, but Jinta rolls away yet still gets wounded over his face. He then clashed with the demon, pushing him back before swinging his sword, trying to rip his arm off, and finally managed to do it. The demon tried to attack Jinta with the other hand, but he dodged his attack and stood far from him. The demon looked at Jinta and asked what he used his sword for. Jinta replied that he used it to protect those he loves. Meanwhile, at Jinta's house, the other demon MILF walked towards Suzyun as she hugs Jinta's robe. The demon tried to explain to Suzyun that she's a demon who insists to stay a human just because she loves her brother so much. Suzyun innocently starts laughing while telling her that she loves Jinta so much. The demon tells her that someone was trying to hurt her brother, so if she could help her by coming with her. Suzyun refused, but the female showed her a glimpse of the future, which contained Yuki playing hide and seek the PP with Kiyomasa. Suzyun was in shock, feeling betrayed for her brother Jinta. She decided to go with her just to prove her wrong. Back at the fight where Jinta was still clashing with the demon, Jinta asked him for the reason he's attacking humans for. The demon told him that they were for a specific target. And they're demons for a reason. They can't really change themselves, and they will always be like this until they reach for their targets. Suddenly he started enlarging his arm and attacked Jinta. Jinta was very slow to block the attack, causing his arm to get ripped off and his sword broken. But he did not surrender. He grabbed the blade and dug it deep inside his heart. The demon was defeated and fell to his back as Jinta started coughing, feeling pain through his arm. The demon told him that he had already won and fulfilled their duty, and 170 years later the demon's god will come down to earth and banish everyone from existence. And they were told that this demon god is living upon their town. Jinta was confused and started thinking about it, remembering his sister was a demon. Jinta wanted to go back to town as fast as possible, but suddenly the demon grabs his face with his ripped arm and suffocates him before he blacks out. Meanwhile in the shrine, Yuki and Kiyomasa were just getting started on their hide the PP game, and that was when Suzyun was standing along with the MILF of a demon. Suzyun was betrayed and shocked, she was speechless. Suzyun started scolding Yuki for cheating on Jinta, who loved her a lot. Meanwhile, Jinta woke up in the river to find himself fine, living and with a right complete arm not ripped anymore. He just skipped that idea and started sprinting back home to check for Suzyun. Meanwhile, Suzyun tried to confess the betrayal she felt from Yuki. She told her that she only accepted for him to touch another hand just because he will become happier. And that's the only reason she let it happen. She could not stand the fact she cheated on him. The demon started to agitate the situation and get Suzyun more angry and more sad, telling her that her brother is fighting demons out there, probably getting hurt while she cheats on him and stab him in the back. Telling her the maiden is actually a prostitute pretending just to get more men, while Yuki begs Suzyun not to listen to her. Suzyun got more and more angry while Jinta sprints over to the shrine. Suzyun was in fear and terror. She ripped the bandage off her head and started laughing hysterically. Yuki tried to explain to her, but she asked her to close her filthy mouth. Suddenly Suzyun transforms and causes shadows and plague to fill the room, becoming normal in age as she's supposed to be. Finally Kiyomasa for once started moving a muscle instead of acting like a cuck and went to grab his sword, but the demon MILF jumped up and kicked him, telling him not to interfere with women work. She told Suzyun she can unsheath the sword and kill the maiden using it. Meanwhile she grabs the Kiyomasa, the useless piece of shirt, and goes outside. Finally Jinta arrives and shouts for Shirayuki as she runs towards him and hugs him as he closes his eyes, but once he opened his eyes her head was already ripped off. Jinta was in pure shock seeing the demon girl holding her head off the floor as she welcomed him back, asking if he's okay. Jinta had no idea this was Suzyun. Jinta started getting flashbacks of Yuki and how he wasted his whole life training to protect her, about all the stuff he could have done with her. Meanwhile Suzyun psychotically laughs while stabbing the sword in her body. Jinta tries to attack her but dodges and tells him that it was close and calls him brother. He starts to realize that it was Suzyun. He asked for the reason she killed Yuki for and she explained to him the reason, and he's supposed to be happy now. She wanted to go back home cause she was feeling exhausted, inviting him to come with her. He was in disbelief of her actions. He declares that Suzyun he knows had already left very far ago. He starts swinging his sword at her desperately while she tries to dodge every attack, and finally the sword breaks on her. He starts laughing pathetically of himself while his arm starts transforming into the demon's arm he had fought. Suzyun was so confused as to why he was trying to attack her in the first place. He told her that he hates her so much. She started realizing what's happening. She told him that she knows now he will give up on her just like anyone else. Suzyun started bouncing over the walls like lightning, begging him to surrender and everything will go back to normal, but he shouts at him before she then pounces at him and dig her hand onto his stomach, wanting to kill him, but he doesn't let her hand go even though she tries to pull away. He started getting flashbacks of her when she's small and young before giving her a punch that shoots her back like a bullet towards the back of the shrine. She stands up again, but he doesn't give her a chance and pounces at her to give her another punch, but the demon MILF takes it instead as his whole arm gets stuck through her body as she tells Suzyun to leave. Suzyun starts walking away in shock as she grabs Yuki's head and walks to the shrine's door, telling him that she hates every and all things in this world, and however long it takes she will come back to visit him again and will make sure to destroy anything that exists in the whole world before she leaves. The other demons laugh hysterically, telling him that she did what she wanted finally, and fulfilled her reason in this world and now can die in peace. Her body vanishes and disappears like ashes flying. He went back to Yuki's body sobbing and screaming like a child. Some time had passed and Jinta went to Kiyomasa's father and started chatting with him about leaving the town to train even more to become stronger and kill the demon goddess for once and all. The elder gave him the sword that laid in the shrine, telling him that there's no reason for it to stay there anymore, it will just get more dust. He bends over to Jinta and apologizes to him, telling him that he was the cause for all this chaos because he was so selfish, wanting his son to marry the maiden. And if he didn't, all that it would have gone well. Jinta pats over his back before leaving the town, and it seems like 170 years had passed, and he's now in a new town asking for the new shrine's maiden. In a city called Suga, a man who was called Zenji rushed to a room where Jinta seems to be sitting down in front of an old man. The man sat in front of Jinta and told him that his boss, which was the old man, wants to hire a samurai to protect his stepdaughter, who was called Natsu, a 13-year-old spoiled brat. He wanted to protect her from a demon who keeps on weeping at night, asking for his daughter to be returned back to him. Jinta referred to himself as Jinya instead of his real name and tells him he agrees. Natsu had arrived, stomping on the floor angrily as she shouts at Zenji and Jinta, saying that she doesn't want Jinta to be her guardian because he seems like someone who heard about money and came to look for it and nothing else. She fires him and leaves to her room. Zenji tried to apologize and bow at Jinta. Later at night, Natsu was in her room and Zenji came to her room to look after her since she fired the original guardian. Suddenly, as they've dropped down their guards, the demon started emerging and weeping as he asks for his daughter to be returned again. He kept repeating one sentence, and it was, "Bring me back my daughter." Zenji was panicking while the muddy-looking demon walked towards him, and that was when Jinta suddenly appeared from nowhere and sliced the demon's arm how Liverpool slices Man City every Premier League. The demon kept weeping and repeating his sentence until finally Jinta rips the demon apart. He looks back at Natsu and asks her how much she's gonna pay him now. She asked him if the demon was dead, but he told her they always leave gray ashes as they die, but that doesn't seem like it, and it seems to be returning back again in the future. Later the next day, Zenji sat down with Jinta in the cafe and started thanking him for defeating that demon. Jinta had some questions for Zenji. He asked if Natsu had any relations with demons, but Zenji shook his head and objected, but he told him that her stepfather had a wife originally who was killed by a demon and his son was kidnapped by a female demon, so that's why he adopted Natsu. Hence, if Natsu was a demon's child, the boss would never adopt her ever. Later that night, Natsu sat with the boss as they ate, and he asked if there was a problem with Jinta, but she denied it, telling him that she was glad he chose him. He told her that he heard about Jinta as a samurai who roamed around the cities slaying demons only only using his sword. She thanked him for being worried about her, and he replied that every father has to be worried over his daughter. When it was time for Natsu's bedtime, Zenji sat down with Jinta in front of her room, guarding her once more. She opens her room's door and talks with Jinta as he introduces himself. They started chatting about how her stepdad, who loved her so much, he replied that her stepdad also does care about her. Jinta tried bringing up the story of his lost son, but she shouted at him to shut up. He apologized and did not bring it up. She then asked if a human and a demon could have a baby. He confirmed, but she was thinking she actually belonged to that demon who keeps appearing for her. Jinta denied because he knew that demon and had direct contact with him in the past. Jinta started explaining that demons can be born by two pair of demons, also could be born by a demon raping a human. And there's the third kind that gets born from excessive emotions and feelings such as hate, sadness, anger, jealousy. And the darker the emotions, the darker the demon. And these emotions that start stacking day after another will get bigger and bigger until it raises a demon that doesn't die even after dying. Suddenly the muddy demon started appearing from nowhere, weeping again, asking for their lost iPhone Pro Max to be brought back. Jinta asked for the demon's name, but the demon just kept on weeping and screaming, which meant the demon was piled up emotions. He pinned him to the floor and looked at Natsu, asking her if he could rip head off. Zenji agreed, but he wanted Natsu's permission because that demon was made up by her emotion. She started crying and asked for what she could do. Jinta explained it was simple. She has got to tell him to slay him and rip his head off. She started having flashbacks of how she wanted to have more attention of her stepfather. She wanted to feel loved, and that's why she brought this demon up to life. She started crying and finally asked Jinta to execute the demon. Jinta jumped off it and then ran towards it and sliced it again as it collapses and falls to the ground and vanishes with white ashes flying in the air. Natsu went to sleep and Jinta remained in the garden, but the demon responded as if the lil shirt got nothing else to do so. Jinta started pulling the threads and understanding that this demon was not only being spawned by Natsu's thoughts but also because of someone else built up emotions. In other words, the boss's dead wife who wanted to have her daughter back. To our surprise, the boss was actually Jinta's father and the demon was his dead mother wanting to have Suzyun back. The demon kept whining, "Bring me back my daughter," but Jinta finally apologized. He called it mother and sent it back to the lobby. The next morning, Jinta stood in front of Natsu. She thanks him, but he tells her he did nothing and is already paid, and he just wanted to return a favor he had owed very long ago. He starts leaving and finally the boss comes out. Zenji asks him why wouldn't he come to tell him bye. He answers that he knows he will finish the job. Zenji asked him for what reason he was so sure. The boss replied that every father knows everything about their sons. Zenji was confused, but the boss tried to bluff around to make him forget about it and asked him to go back to the market shop. At the 6th year of their biological years, Jinta went to a restaurant and had noodles for lunch. His waitress called Ufo served him a bowl of hot noodles. Her father was very proud of her. Then he started mentioning the incident that happened a few days ago called the Tsujiri incident. Few lost people were found dead, but they did match the lost number. The old man then mentioned that he just bought this restaurant 10 days ago for a special price. But since then Jinta was the only regular customer for them. He had been there every day for 5 days already. Jinta paid the owner in their currency and the guy mentioned that he seems rich for a traveler. Jinta told him that he has a job and it's about killing demons. The man mocked him respectfully, calling him a Zoomera for such a job. Jinta then left, but the guy asked him about the incident and if he could help with it. He mentioned that the dead bodies were found ripped and wounded but not stabbed, as if they were killed by an animal, so they are definitely demons. Jinta asked him about the place they found the dead bodies and the old man replied that it was over a bridge in their small town. Ufo told him that he should be careful walking at night because he's just a baby Zoomer acting heroic. Later at night, Jinta was hanging around the bridge waiting for something to happen. But after waiting for so long, nothing happened. So he decided to wait some more, and then suddenly he heard a washing machine scream and rushed towards the location. He heard the sound to find a few dead bodies and they were all men and no washing machines. He looked around for the demon who had caused this, but there was no one there. Suddenly something invisible passed by him and slashed his robe. Jinta unsheathed his sword and stood ready to attack. He locked in and focused on anything that comes close and swiftly clashed his sword with the invisible matter. Unfortunately, the invisible demon managed to slash Jinta's chest, causing him to get more angry. Jinta pulled his arm out of his robe and transformed it into the demonic arm he had and decided to fight him equally. The demon tried to attack him, but Jinta spotted him and broke his blade in pieces before slicing the air, slashing his body as he starts bleeding. Finally, the demon revealed himself. Jinta thought he was Tsujiri and attempted to attack him, but the demon threw his weapon and told him that he was actually trying to search for Tsujiri and thought that Jinta was him and he doesn't want to fight him. His name was Moski. Jinta had to believe him and decided to go back home at his place. He offered him wine while he sits there in a human form. Moski tells Jinta that he hasn't poisoned the wine and Jinta replied that it will not affect him anyways. Jinta told him that he will trust that he's not Tsujiri, but he has to explain why did he hear a woman scream at that location they were at. Moski told him while crying that his wife, who was called Hatsu, was one of the Tsujiri's victims and he loved her so much that he decided to stop being a demon to become a human. And it also seems like that Sujiri kidnaps females and slain males. He also defended himself, saying that he hates whoever did this to her and he will kill them whether he is a human or a demon. He then asked Jinta for the reason he wants to kill the demon for. He told him that he was a human before becoming a demon and he will kill any demon who hurt humans. Mosky relaxed and told him that he agrees and offered that they both work together to kill that demon and share the information with each other. The next day they started roaming all around the city asking for any information about that demon called Sujiri. But no one knew anything about it. They met at the bridge and Mosky was disappointed and they decided to go back home and shared some drinks, causing them to get slightly drunk. Mosky asked Jinta about the reason he kills demons for, and he mentioned that he does it for money, but he also does it to become stronger because he eventually has got to defeat a specific demon, but he will think about it once he get to meet them again. He then talked with him about Shirayuki's incident. He started getting flashbacks of that day Suzune killed Yuki. Jinta then asked Mosky what he was going to do after getting his revenge. Mosky told him that he will live peacefully on his own. The next day, Jinta went to the restaurant to have more noodles while Ufo stands in front of him and asks him about the Tsujiri's case. He told her that he's still investigating it. He then complimented Ufo for being pretty and 9 out of 10 people will find her pretty. Her father was happy that Jinta thought so and offered for her to be his sugar baby, but she refused and told him that she still wants to be his daughter for a little longer. Jinta called her father a good guy after he left, but she then asked about his father, which caused Jinta to be uncomfortable. He decided to tell her about the story that happened with his father and his sister Suzune. Later that night, Mosky and Jinta tried to gather more information and stood at the bridge, but to no avail. The demon didn't want to show up no more. They decided to leave, but while walking back, Jinta noticed Ufo standing in front of a tree checking it out. They decided to go talk with her, but it seems like Mosky disappeared to let him have some free time with her. They started ranting about trees and the differences between them, then Jinta walked her back home. Jinta kept walking along with Ufo as she explains to him that he has to take a break from time to time or he will become mind exhausted. He has to look for the brighter side and make sure he gives his brain a good amount of relaxation. Check for the beautiful things he's missing out. Jinta was happy to spend some time with her. They finally reach her home and she bids him farewell. Mosky appears beside him and tells him how nice of a girl she is. They decide to go back to the bridge to take the night shift guarding the bridge where mosquitoes are plotting their downfall. While Mosky gets drunk walking across the bridge, a girl decides to cross the bridge while Jinta rests his eyes before opening them to see her and hear a sudden body slash that makes Mosky fall to the floor bleeding out. The girl screamed in horror before something from above pounces at Jinta. A demon that looks exactly like Wolf tried attacking Jinta, but he already got ready, clashing with their claws. Jinta tried attacking it again, but its skin was so tough. Jinta tried to cover the girl, but the demon pounced at him and knocked him away. It threw the claw towards the girl, who screams, but she was scooped away by something which seems to be Mosky, who used his invisibility to defend her. Jinta tried to pounce at it and finish it off, but it managed to stop him and escape, jumping in the air using infinite amount of double jobs. She is pretty opus. After turning around, the girl asks Jinta to get her up on her feet and he goes for it. Holding her hand and picking her up, she told him that he still has that same cold demeanor. Jinta was confused, but she asked him if he forgot about her. Jinta suddenly remembered her. It was Natsu, the girl who had issues with the weeping demon. She had grown up after 3 years. He complimented her smile and how calm she had become. He asked about what she was doing out here at this time, and she told him that she was delivering an order for a customer. Suddenly Zenji appeared in front of them and he remembered Jinta. He wondered what he was doing there, but Jinta explained that Natsu was almost getting killed by a demon. Zenji panicked and started acting like a child, hugging against Natsu's robe. Jinta asked them to come to the restaurant if they wanted to find him again if they ever needed anything. Zenji then told Jinta that there was a nearby temple where a monk got killed not too long ago, and they often hear a woman screaming every day, and he should check it out. Jinta asked him about the temple's name and Zenji mentioned it was called Mizuho. Meanwhile, Mosky kept sprinting after the demon, but he stopped to catch his breath and search for the demon before hearing a scream coming his way from above. He saw the demon carrying a woman using his teeth and hopping over, floating in the air and escaping. Mosky got a flashback of his wife laying on the floor dead while he cries next to her, which boosted his adrenaline and got him all worked up and angry. He turned back to a demon and ran after him until he had finally caught up to find himself in front of the temple. He used his invisibility skill and walked inside. He kept walking upstairs until he found the demon monster eating the woman he had recently acquired while repeating the sentence, "I must return back." The demon was eating the woman in a gruesome way. Mosky was angry and furious. He wanted to do anything to avenge all the women and his poor dead wife. He started sprinting towards him, but the demon noticed his presence, especially with this high stupid heels he wears, and then turned to him and slashed his tummy, ripping his guts before returning back to his food, popping her head down his tummy like a pill. Mosky started bleeding as he felt pathetic for dying in that temple like that. Even the monster got past him, not caring about him as if he doesn't exist. Later on, Jinta finally came to the scene, finding Mosky sitting behind a post. He went towards him as he dies slowly. Mosky gave him a sword and told him that this sword was made to kill demons and he should use it to defeat that donkey looking like demon. Jinta then asked Mosky if he can consume his ability to vanish, and Mosky agreed. Once Jinta started consuming him, he started getting flashbacks of his life. Mosky had a very nice life with his wife before she was dead. Finally, his body turned to ashes as the special shaped eye on Mosky's face pops out on Jinta, referring to him having his ability. Meanwhile, the demon was in another room eating another body of a prostitute female it had found late that night. The demon started talking to itself, saying that eye has to kill all the males because they deserve death, and it has to eat more females to return back, but it doesn't really know what it's gonna return back to. After picking one of the female's Nugget's legs, Jinta was sprinting in invisibility while holding the sword out, then sliced its arm to make it fall to the floor. He reveals himself to the demon after dodging a few hits as it speaks to him, telling him that he's a devourer too. He replied that he unlike it. He devours demons and invisibility is the ability which will defeat it. Jinta charged towards it and dodged one of its claws and swiftly sliced through its neck and it fell to the floor. Jinta then goes towards its head and speaks to it, asking how come if it kills men and eats women, how come his wife was left like a corpse? The demon started saying nonsense before Jinta had grabbed its head and lifted it up, speaking about its ability which was a dash that could give him very high speed which can make him walk on air because of how fast he can get. Once he consumed the demon, it appeared that the demon was actually Mosky's wife. Her memories got revealed to him and how she died, and it happened by two rapists, who raped her and threw her into the river to drown. Her demon body vanishes while she calls for Mosky. Later on, the two rapists were walking in the town while planning for the next victim they planned to rape as they mocked the Mosky's wife. Jinta walked up to them, then dashed and sliced their necks, then used the knife Mosky gave him to finish them off, fulfilling Mosky's desire to have revenge. Now Mosky can rest in peace. After a while, a girl is seen playing with a ball, bouncing it up and down while she sings some deep nonsense song that I don't really feel like talking about. Meanwhile, some baldy guy walks to the old guy's restaurant. He looks worried and puzzled. While trying to enter the restaurant, Natsu comes out of the restaurant bumping into him and starts apologizing for a big amount because she saw he was carrying two swords. He apologized to her and the old guy calmed her down, then mentioned that Natsugo might be a samurai but he's very nice. Later on, he entered the restaurant with the same expressions on his face and Ufo looks at him serving him noodles. The old man came out of the kitchen and asked if he was okay, but he looked very worried. He asked him if he knows anything about his brother. He was called Satanaga, but the old man denied that he ever heard about him. He also tried to ask Ufo, but she also didn't know anything. He then mentioned that even his parents forgot about him and he was the only one who remembers him so far. Ufo offered for him to meet with Jinta because he usually investigates these cases, and speaking of the devil, literally, he appeared. Later on, Jinta was served noodles. The old man tried to receive a compliment from Jinta on the noodles, but Jinta did not want to compliment and kept calling it average. He started talking with Ufo some more about flowers. Natsugo decided to interfere and asked Jinta if he could help him with his brother's case, but Jinta refused and told him that he will help him only if his problem is caused by a demon. Natsugo was disappointed and started walking away out of the restaurant after paying for his untouched meal. The old man and Ufo looked disappointed. They started begging for Jinta to help the poor guy because he's a very nice man. Jinta agreed cause he owed them a favor. Later the next day, Jinta went to a different restaurant who makes desserts, and while he eats, Natsu passed by and decided to sit with him. They started chatting and then she asked him about his age and he answered to her that he was 31. She was shocked that he looked so young anyways. They kept chatting and she told him to drop the formalities and call her by her name only without anything that comes before it. Later at night, Natsugo was leaving house. His mother stopped him and asked if he's leaving again. He was the sole heir and he has to be responsible for his actions. He told her that he was going to search for his brother, but she denied his existence. Natsugo was so mad he opened the door and slammed it behind him before he runs off angrily before stopping to pant and rest, and suddenly heard his brother saying something. He turned around to look, but there was no one. He started having flashbacks of his brother. While daydreaming, Jinta was standing against the wall behind him asking about that case of his brother, telling him that he will help him along with it. The night has fallen and they decided to go to the restaurant to have a conversation about his brother, but instead they started ranting about swords. Natsugo asked him about his katana, wondering how did he manage to claim a sword looking very professional. And Jinta explained to him that he used to live in a town where they created their own sword and he has got a license to carry a katana sword just in case he wants to snitch on him. He then asked Jinta if he could grab his sword and check it out, but Jinta stopped him and refused. Jinta then asked him to get straight to the point. They both kept drinking tea until Natsugo started talking about his brother who disappeared mysteriously. And what's more funny is that he's the only one who remembers about him anymore. He kept searching over and over but for nothing. His parents swore that Natsugo was the only son they brought to life. And there's no one who's called Sadanaga. Referring to his brother, he also met a few people who got some unusual history with his brother, but at the end they ended up with the same answer. Jinta then asked Natsugo about when he was lost. Natsugo explained that he was lost this summer, and before he disappeared he mentioned something about going to see his daughter. Jinta then asked him if he had any flowers on his balcony or window. Natsugo agreed, telling him that he had few flowers and he managed to save them before they got to shrivel. He said it was a flower with a yellow core and white petals, but it had a very strong scent, yet his brother did not really like flowers. Jinta stopped him and asked him to meet him the next day at his house. Natsugo was confused, but he agreed. The next day, he went to the restaurant, finds Natsu sitting there. He tried to call her using some formal name, but she got mad, so he used her basic name. Jinta then asked Ufo about Natsugo and if she was close to him, but she shook her head and told him that she only speaks to him when he's in the restaurant, but she knows that he's a very polite guy. The old guy and Natsu did agree on it and said the same. The old guy came out of the kitchen grabbing a fragment over some rag, showing it to Jinta as he explains that Natsugo had gifted it to him, but he doesn't really need it, so he's offering it to Jinta. He tried to refuse, but the old man insisted, so Jinta had to take it. The old man also explained that Natsugo's mother is very strict. Jinta then asked Ufo about the flower he was talking about. Could it be Narcissus flower? Ufo nodded. Jinta started thinking before he sighs, as he had hoped if it wasn't Narcissus. We then see a vision of the girl who was singing the creepy song and bouncing her ball and looking at her parents who vanished. Finally, Natsugo took Jinta along with him back home, and his mother was already there asking Natsugo about Jinta. Before he could explain anything, Jinta bent over to bow for the woman and greet her. She bowed down all over the floor and greeted him back. They both went inside and walked over to Natsugo's room. As they sit down, Natsugo pulled out a file and showed Jinta the flowers he had kept. Jinta then explained that this exact flower has to do with some demon who kept his brother away from the real world and can't return back. He looked down at the flowers and noticed that they were smaller than average, so Jinta told Natsugo that the girl his brother has mentioned might actually be the demon who captured him. Then Jinta asked him to lead him to his brother's room, so Natsugo agreed and got up, but Jinta waited for him to leave, only to use his disappearance skill to walk with him, because he knew nothing supernatural will happen if the demon spotted his presence. Once Natsugo tried to enter his brother's room, he started smelling the flower, which got even more stronger. Natsugo started feeling dizzy before falling down to the floor. He suddenly started getting a flashback of this girl who had been living with her parents back in the day. The whole town started burning and she tried to help her parents, but they both died. It started raining to extinguish the flames, and the next day she slowly woke up with the whole city burnt up to ashes. While she walks around the town, everyone was scared of her. They didn't want to touch her. Later on, she figured out that her eyes were red and she was turned into a demon. She started sprinting away and out of the town in sadness as she kept walking. Day after another, she started growing up until she reached for Natsugo's, but earlier 200 years ago. And she found that they were having fun as a family. She fell to the floor and started crying, begging for her life to come back. The house started to shift and turned into her past house. She was confused as to how come she turned it into that. Meanwhile, Natsugo wakes up and looks around in shock, as he was in a dimension where sky was red and the scene was quite foggy. He was surprised to find Jinta already in the dimension. Jinta explained to him that they're in a mirror to their world and also told him about the flashbacks he saw. And Natsugo agreed, telling him he saw them too. Natsugo shifted his head and looked in front of him and found his brother standing with the little girl. He tried walking towards him but got more and more dizzy as he walked. The girl was bouncing the ball while Sadanaga was standing with the little girl, telling her that he's going to make some food, but she refused and told him to go back to his original life and back to his family instead. He told her that he's not leaving and he's staying with her and will leave only if she agrees to be his daughter. She had been living in that dimension for 100 years already. She refused and rejected to be his daughter. He told her that he's not going to leave until she comes with him, even if it will take him the rest of his life. Suddenly their picture disappeared and only the girl stood there standing in front of them, bouncing her ball. Natsugo bent over and crawled, crying and begging her to bring her brother back, but she didn't reply to him. Jinta held his shoulder and told him that this is not useful. Jinta started looking all around him for the flowers and started checking his surroundings to find out that the flowers grows up faster than usual. And this place's time flows 20 times faster than real life. The girl agreed to him and told him that there is no one here anymore and she's sorry she took his brother. She then told them they could rest now, cause once they wake up they go back to their real life. Jinta asked her with a smile about what she will do now, and she answered that she will go to live with him just as she promised. Suddenly then woke up. Natsugo was so sad and bent over the floor crying over his brother. The next day, they went to the restaurant as Natsugo had made all of his investigation and heard about the combustion which happened 200 years ago. He somewhat feels a little relieved about this. He then mentioned the castle she used to live in was actually the castle they currently live in, and that where she lived in the past. Jinta bowed down to Natsugo, apologizing because he couldn't help him with this case, but Natsugo was happy, saying that his brother knew what he was doing. He got up and walked to the door, and Ufo shouted for him and told him that his brother must be a very nice guy for at least wanting to help a little kid, even if no one remembered him. A tear rolled down Natsugo's cheek as he smiled and nodded at her, telling her that he's very proud of his brother. Now the old guy in UFO bowed down for Jinta because he helped Natsugo with this case, but Jinta wasn't satisfied. He told the old man that this case was still mysterious. The little demon girl knew Sadanaga's real name, and as a samurai no one gets to know their real name except for their family and their masters. The old man told him that it's possible for the girl to know his real name because they lived together for as long as he had mentioned. He then explained that he gave him the samurai's fragment that can only be acquired by samurais, and Natsugo can't give it away because it's very special. He started to gather the threads and explained that the real story is Sadanaga tried to leave the girl's dimension but figured out that he had grown up living with her for 20 years. Meanwhile, it was only a month that passed in real life. He couldn't go back to his family looking so old, so he decided to search for a nearby restaurant and opened it to cook the only thing he can make as a hobby, which is noodles. It appears that the old man was actually Sadanaga and Ufo was the little demon girl. The old man laughed at him and told him that he's right, but he shouldn't be telling Natsugo about him because what happened in the past is just the past, and he only wanted to help his brother by recommending Jinta to solve this mystery for him. And the reason for him to choose to adopt Ufo wasn't really special. Then finally he mentioned that Jinta was a demon, and it was obvious from his aura since he had been living with a demon for 20 years. Ufo smiled at him and asked him what he wants to do now after finding out about this messed up story. He told her that he really wants to do her. The next day, we see Jinta sitting with Natsu's stepdad. They were drinking wine and sharing hentai pics in 4K. The old man had pulled out one poster of a female and said that the pic and asked a favor from Jinta. He said that the picture he's looking at right now is rumored to be a demon's picture, and he wants him to investigate about it. He also mentioned that the artist of this picture got sick after drawing this picture, and is now bedridden because of its curse. Jinta took the job and left. Later on, Jinta decides to hit the restaurant where the creepy family settles in. Ufo smiles at him and greets him. He orders noodles again as if he has nothing else to eat. Suddenly Zenji entered the restaurant in a rush asking for Jinta's help, talking about the same poster of the painting called Kudanzaka, saying that the owner of this painting had died recently in mysterious events. Jinta took the poster and noticed that it was ripped up from the bottom, but Zenji explained that he's just clumsy and he slipped while holding it and gave him the uwu. Jinta started comparing the paintings together, and they looked almost identical. Jinta asked Zenji if he can bring him the name of the artist, and Zenji agreed, telling him that he knows the illustration library which sells these paintings. They went to that store, which was full of hentai paintings and gooners. Zenji walked over to the seller and asked him about the Kudanzaka painting, but the seller told him that he removed it because it will give him bad luck, especially after the rumors which had been going all around. Zenji then asked him about the artist and went back to Jinta to tell him he knew the place. Jinta thanked him and went to the artist's house. He knocked on the door and entered. The artist was in his bed and greeted Jinta, then invited him in and then got up to make some tea for them both. Jinta asked him about the painting, and if he's bedridden. The painter told him that he's not actually bedridden but more like he's old and that he can't do painting like he used to. The whole room was covered in paintings. Jinta then asked him about the painting and the guy laughed happily, telling him about the painting's story. He took a puff out of his smoke pipe. He told him that this painting had to do with a guy called Motoharu, referring to Jinta's stepdad. Jinta was amused and asked him to say more about it because he was Motoharu's adopted child. Jinta then suddenly got a flashback of Motoharu before he died. Jinta was hugging Yuki, who was still young and passed out. Motoharu was laughing at how pathetic he was, saying that he couldn't even defend the maiden. He then advised Jinta to be a man who evaluates his hatred emotions and told him to take care of Yuki and try his best to flow with Suzyun. After that, the artist spoke to him about the painting's story, reminiscing his memories. When he was young, he arrived at the place he was going to stay at, where there was this female who lived in the same place calling herself Nane. He lived in that place where Motoharu used to deliver messages from the maiden. He always hated protecting her and he didn't like his job because he feels like a postman. He also called her a demon more than the demons, and they started laughing at his statement. Then the artist told Jinta that the painting he asked about is the one he drew back in the day when Motoharu kept coming over, sending mails and whining every single time, talking about his hate towards the maiden. But one day he stopped complaining and asked the artist to draw this painting for him, and then explained the non-name female is possibly the same maiden he serves in the shrine. Meanwhile, while Jinta listens to this story, he was invested in hearing more. The artist told him that painting's idea came from Motoharu request and the theory he talked about. Jinta then asked him about the reason it was rumored to be a demon. The artist told him it was first because Motoharu called the maiden that, and he did it as a joke and everyone took it for real. The artist then told him that the name was inspired by Motoharu because he couldn't think of a better name and because it originally had a meaning. The meaning was, "My wife is more beautiful than a god." Jinta smiled at him, thinking it was silly. The artist then explained to him that the painting is originally his stepdad's emotions and love for the woman he loved most. He then gave Jinta a first project art drawn of the painting and told him to keep it. He then mentioned that his stepdad used to come to this town, but once he said he adopted 2 lost kids, he stopped returning. Jinta started getting flashbacks of when they were young. Later on, Jinta returned back to the restaurant and finally decided to order something new to eat, noodles. He looked saddened, but UFO tried to cheer him up along with the old man. Once he finished his food, he went back to the boss who gave him the job, explaining to him the painting was just a normal painting that has nothing to do with any demons, and in fact it was just called that because of someone's emotions. The guy then asked him about the rumor with the guy who died under mysterious circumstances. Jinta explained that it was only a coincidence. The older guy thanked him for his efforts and told him that he will reward him for his hard work with money. They started chatting and gossiping about useless stuff while drinking wine. 1 year later, Jinta was standing in some park where a demon walked towards him. It was a female looking extremely ugly that you'd rather fudge a spiked up on a hole than to touch her body. She started crying and asked him to rent her, but he told her that he was better off renting a car. She got mad angry. She got even more ugly and told him he just a broke man and started attacking him using a bloody knife she held. He kept dodging her ugliness and finally used his katana to finish her off as she falls to the floor and starts fading into ashes. The beautiful female was spotted once he shifted his head. He looked at her as she handed him over a purse full of money, thanking him for what he did. She told him that this girl was an escort in the past, but she got bad diseases that caused her to lose her body and mind and ended up like this and became the prostitute who killed the men under the cherry tree. Jinta asked her for her name and she told him that her name is the same name for all the prostitutes, and this explains everything. She then told him that if this happens to her one day, she counts on him to finish her off. She then leaves and Jinta thinks she's a mysterious woman. Later on we see Natsu and UFO going outside to hang out at the festival. They were eating food and having so much fun. Meanwhile, Natsu wishes that Zenji or Jinta could make it and hang out, but her father had scolded her, telling her that festivals are the main source of money making. UFO told her it's gonna be a girl's day. They found a weird-looking flower and Natsu asked UFO about it, and she explained that it has no specific name, but it was called Demon's Lantern from the way it looks. Natsu was scared when she said that, as UFO wonders if she really hates demons, and Natsu agrees, telling her that Jinta had rescued her twice before. UFO noticed that Natsu had a small crush on Jinta as UFO asks about it. Natsu denied and told her that she just feels comfortable around him. Suddenly a guy called Aketsu calls for them to take a look at his merchandise. UFO greeted him and explained to Natsu that this guy is one of their customers for about a year now. He greeted them both and told them that he's called Sumiguru Aketsu, which refers to a very famous craftsman who are the best in their work. She had to take a look at his merchandise and liked how they looked a lot. He tried to give her a seashell and told her to gift it to her lover, but she denied that she has a lover. He then gave her a necklace which was a wooden bird shape. She agreed to take it, and then he offered her a small gift, which was a metallic long hair clip. He told her he was going to throw it away anyways. She accepted the gift and took it. Then they thanked him and left the place. One of the demon's lantern flowers fell on the floor while they leave. Meanwhile, Jinta was in another place in a dark, dimly lit room searching for a child demon who hides and finally manages to defeat him. He goes out and gets paid for it before he walks away. The prostitute appeared once again from the dark alley and told him that she appreciates working with him as he gives her some money since she was the one who told him that this guy was hiring. She then told him to stay cautious because a new guy came to town and it was rumored he defeats demons too using some ability like dogs and birds and other monsters. Jinta didn't care because he's been playing Fortnite for quite a long now. The next day, Jinta returned to the restaurant and both UFO and the old guy were so worried about Natsu. She had been acting quite different once she put on that hair clip. Once she saw him, she got up and grabbed his hand and started rubbing it against her face. He tried to pull his hand away, but she was annoyed. UFO told him that she'd been acting like this once she had put it on. He asked to see it and Natsu gave it to him, but it looked normal. He then gave it back to her and suddenly she hugged him while calling him his big brother. Zenji entered the restaurant and looked shocked. He tried to pull her away, but she was so mad and furious, asking him to stop touching her. They sat down and Zenji wanted to know what was going on as it seemed like he came along with Natsugo. Once they settled, UFO explained that they got that hair clip from a guy who was called Sumiguru Aketsu, but Zenji refused to accept this statement and told them that this guy died centuries ago, and he was the best craftsman of all time. He was worried that he came back as a demon and is currently coming after them. The shop's old man told them that he met Aketsu many times and he is very normal, and not a demon at all. Jinta said he has to investigate about it and tried to get up and leave, but Natsu hugged his arm even more, not wanting to let him go. She told him that she's so happy she finally found him and she can't just let him go. Jinta smiled and patted her head, telling her he won't be gone for long and will be back as soon as possible. She let him go and he takes his sword and started searching for that guy called Aketsu. He finally left and started asking about Aketsu all around the marketplace, but only got led to some neighborhood. He started having flashbacks of Suzune and his life and how it went, and suddenly found Aketsu standing behind him. Jinta took a fighting position and looked at Aketsu getting prepared as Aketsu tells him that it was the first time he hears that a demon is looking for him. He summoned some of his hounds and stood in front of Jinta as Jinta locked in. He then said that he was Sumiguro Aketsu III. Aketsu then ordered the hounds to attack Jinta, but he managed to slice one of them apart. To his surprise, the hounds kept spawning after Jinta defeated them one after another. He noticed that they did not stop spawning, so he decided to use his stealth skill, going invisible. Aketsu thought that this skill was his main skill and mocked him, telling him that hounds are still hounds and they have sharp hearing and smelling skills. It felt like Jinta had no advantage, so he revealed himself for the dogs while defeating them before looking at Aketsu, and used the dash skill he had, slashing all around him and swiping the sword above Aketsu's head. Aketsu tried to negotiate with Jinta, but he swiftly swung his sword down his body. It seems like it was one of Aketsu's clones. Then Aketsu stood behind Jinta and commanded his hounds to attack Jinta, and they did. They started biting on his neck and attacking him and putting him down. Aketsu turns around and smiled as he farewells him, and Jinta had already got up and consumed Aketsu's ability to summon hounds and used them against him before walking over to him, placing his sword against his neck and telling him to answer his questions or he will finish him off. After the hounds had cornered Aketsu, they disappear once Jinta dispels them. Aketsu walks over to the place he had put his summoning dolls and picks them up, telling him that he can summon the souls inside the objects by using emotions. Jinta was surprised. Jinta then got to it and asked him about the hair clip he had given to Natsu. Aketsu then told him that he can't remember what he's talking about. But when Jinta threatened him with his sword, he got his memory jogged, telling him that he doesn't know anything about it, but maybe he can find a solution to this issue. Later that day, Jinta walked back to the restaurant and found Natsu standing at the door watching the night sky as Jinta walked over to her, and she greeted him. He tells her to come along with him for a walk, and they set off. Natsu hugged his arm and walked along with him as they stopped at a tree watching it and chatting about it, before Jinta starts talking about his past and how he couldn't really help whoever he swore to protect and take care of. Natsu started reassuring him and trying to relieve his stress while chatting with him, and finally it came time that Jinta pulls out the gift the restaurant owner had gifted him and remembered what Aketsu told him. He told him to give it to her and everything will go back to normal. He gives it to her and she was so happy she will get to touch his hand while calling him Big Bro. She took the gift from him and held it against the hair clip, and they both summoned a mockingbird followed by Eminem and flew in the sky. She then lost consciousness and fell onto his arms while Aketsu appears behind Jinta. They go to the docks as Jinta managed to make Natsu rest on the stairs against the wall while he chats with Aketsu. Aketsu explains that the sword fragment he had acquired was originally created by the hair clip's brother, and they were both containing a soul inside them. Hence why Natsu thought Jinta was her brother and she was attached to him. They kept chatting about a lot of stuff according to Japanese history. And finally Aketsu decided to leave while Jinta tells him that he already knows that he's a demon. Aketsu looked back at him and told him that he doesn't care if he's one or not as long as he doesn't hurt people or cause chaos. Just how he knows UFO is a demon, but he's letting her live. However, he still finds them demons, however nice or for how much he had helped humans, he remains a demon and he won't hesitate in killing them if he had to. Jinta nodded and Aketsu left. The next day at the restaurant, Natsu was sitting down where Zenji is mocking her for calling Jinta her big brother and started making fun of her before she shouts at him. She was very embarrassed and terrified about what would she say to Jinta when he comes back, as she recalls everything they've done in the past day. She looked very worried and shy. Meanwhile, as Jinta walks through the neighborhoods and the alleys, he met the prostitute who always got him work. He mocked her for being too early to seduce men, and she replied that she's only there to check on him. He smiled at her and started having slight emotions towards her. Later, after 115 years, we see two females, a girl and her mother, who seems like convincing her daughter to become the shrine's maiden as well, just how she did. The girl seemed annoyed that she doesn't want her friends to come and see her wearing this or being a shrine maiden. Her mother explained that they inherited it generations after generations. After a while, Jinta climbed the stairs wearing casual outfit that doesn't relate to his old century. He walked over to the girl and asked for the shrine's maiden and told her that he has got a question to ask her. She told him that they don't get called that, they're called Itsukuhemi, and that's how it has been for ages in Jinta's shrine. Jinta was shocked and amused that they named the shrine over his own name, and a tear rolled down his face. He carried his sword and apologized, then told her that he will leave now. She stopped him and asked him about that question he wanted to know the answer to. He looked at her and stood silently and then replied, "Whoever moves first is gay."
Baby, you got something in your nose.
He then proceeds to leave the shrine while the girl is shocked. Later on, we see two girls bouncing up and down in a school looking so happy they will be in the same class together, while Jinta walks towards the board list and checks out for his name. One of the girls stares up at him mysteriously. They sat in their seats watching the performance as they talked about it. One of them mentioned that this performance was made to recreate a scene back in the Edo century. It was called The Prostitute in the Rain. The girl complimented how her friend was so smart to know all about this. Meanwhile, Jinta sat at the back of the hall and watched silently as a very old woman stood at the performance and started recalling what she had prepared from the story. While everyone listens carefully, Jinta kept watching and didn't care as they pull the ropes to open the curtains and shows the scene unfolding behind her. They recall the scenes where Natsugo was running through the rain to hide under shack with a red face from all the running and was followed by a girl running under the same shack and drying herself out. Natsugo looked at her in amusement, and then she asked him if he had never seen an escort before. He apologized to her and she laughed at him. The rain did not stop, so she decided to leave, but as she does, Natsugo asks for her name and she tells him the same just as she said to Jinta back in the day. She was called Yutaka, and that was the name for all the prostitutes anyways. The woman who tells the story started explaining how pretty the escort was and then returned back to the scene. Natsugo shifted his face and saw a dark matter with 2 swords looking like his brother. He turned his face to look at Yutaka and she was worried, telling him that this was the man of her past. Later the next day, Natsugo went to the restaurant and found Jinta. He sat with him and ordered noodles while Jinta eats the noodles along with him. Natsugo explained to Ufo that they hung out yesterday with Zenji. Natsugo told her that Jinta had drank a lot of booze and got all drunk from it. Ufo asked him to not drink much and he told her that he's fine. Natsugo then asked Jinta about what he done when he left, and Jinta told him he was investigating a case over there about a demon. The next day, Natsugo went to the same spot from yesterday where the rain was extreme, but this time he was prepared grabbing an umbrella and a lantern. Yutaka came this time with an umbrella too. She smiled at him and asked him about the reason he was there, but he told her he was trying to find out about the dark matter he saw yesterday. She told him that he shouldn't be searching about the man of her past, especially since that she's a prostitute. But he told her that he was actually there to see her. She told him that he can just buy her, but he stopped her and told her that he doesn't really care about that. Suddenly the dark matter appeared again and stood there. Natsugo thought it looked exactly like his brother while the girl looked at it and was worried thinking about it and looked too scared. Natsugo went over and stood in front of her to make her feel more safe, and the dark matter disappeared. The next day, Jinta was in the restaurant and told Ufo he was mad because yesterday he was dealing with a demon, but they escaped, and that demon only appears in the rain. Natsugo entered the restaurant again and walked over to Jinta and asked for them all to listen to him, and that was when Zenji and Natsu entered the room. He told them about Yutaka, and he fell in love with her. They told him they support him, and Ufo knew he'd do anything to win her heart. Zenji started telling him about a funny scenario to win her heart by making Jinta pretend to be an assaulter, and Natsugo stops him and proves to her that he's her savior. Natsu refused the idea, telling him it was tacky and dumb. Zenji was disappointed. Zenji then asked the restaurant owner about his opinion, and he told him that he should be calm and patient, and if he wants someone to fall in love with him, he should definitely do that. Speaking about himself and saying that he once spent 20 years to make a woman come back home with him. Jinta looked at Ufo and smiled while she blushes, knowing that he knows that she knows that he knows it was about her. Natsugo thanked them and got up, telling them that he's thankful for their advice, and he was going to wait for her under that same shack. The old man looked at Ufo, noticing that she was worried, and she told them that Zenji and Jinta talked about the same incident, and she insists that it was never rainy the past 2 days. At the next night, Yutaka went to the same spot wondering if Natsugo will return, and at the performance the woman starts telling the story about that night, telling that Yutaka was feeling something that she cannot tell. She was attached to her past regardless of her being a prostitute or not, and her past contained her older brother who loved her as a family, and as a sister. Meanwhile, in the scene while Yutaka stands, the wind gets heavier while the dark matter appears and calls for her to come over. She threw the umbrella and started rushing towards it, thinking it was her brother. Suddenly Natsugo stops her and hides her behind him, telling her that the thing she sees is not a human, and they live in a world which contains stuff like demons. He unsheathed his sword and aimed it at the demon before saying his prayer. He rushed towards it while screaming, trying to slash it or clash with it. They started showing in the performance Natsugo dancing with the dark matter as they played the roles, using swords and fighting. Finally the dark matter pulls out 2 swords and starts fighting with Natsugo while he dodges its attacks. Before trying to give it the death blow, the lightning smacks their sky and shows the face of Sadanaga, Natsugo's brother. He was shocked, but suddenly Jinta appeared and sliced the dark matter in half, ending its life, before seeing it into Shirayuki getting her neck sliced. Natsugo started panting while kneeling on the floor as Yutaka complimented him for being so brave to dance with his sword with a demon, and Jinta told him that he deserves compliments for only pulling out his sword to face the demon. He told them that the dark matter was an obsession that failed to become a demon, just like emotions, and whoever looks at it thinks it is someone they know very much and is obsessed with it. Natsugo agreed, saying he saw it as Sadanaga. The rain stops and the performance ends and the audience starts applauding. One of the girls started waking up her friend because she had passed out, and they left the hall. The next day they met at the class with Jinta, and started talking about the performance where it was all messed up according to what Jinta had lived, since they didn't know Jinta was actually the one in that performance. We see our hero had gone through some trouble with some punks, and now he slaughtered them all and talked to himself about how he doesn't mind killing any demons as if it was a piece of cake. Later on, Jinta was walking with UFO through the city market and they started chatting about the villa he had just slain 11 demons in, and passed by a guy who sells wine while everyone was so furious to try out his wine as they have it called frozen ice. UFO suggested for him to buy some, but he told her he already got many at his place. They kept walking forward. After that it seems like everyone had gathered at the restaurant and they were waiting for Natsugo to arrive, and he finally does. He stood in front of them and started taking a toast, but Natsu scolded him to skip the intro as if he was an ad from YouTube. He got embarrassed and got to the point revealing that he's now the general manager of the market branch he's working at and he's very happy about it. They started to congratulate him about this and even UFO brought him some wine, which also appeared to be some very fancy wine, that Jinta bought for his celebrations. Zenji teared up and didn't know how to thank them for being so nice to him. The old man had brought a hot pot which contained some chicken and veggies, telling them he can't keep on making noodles specially in such an event. They were so happy that he finally had done something new. Zenji cheered and drank the shot, and then told them to start eating while it's still hot. They started celebrating for some time. Then Zenji pulled out a bottle of wine which was called the frozen ice. Natsu took the bottle from him and poured him some which made Zenji very emotional. He tried to drink the wine but then spat it out saying it's extremely sharp and he couldn't stand how stingy it tasted, not to mention its awful taste. Natsugo took a shot as well but didn't spit it and told them that this was a bad idea. They handed Jinta a shot too, but he didn't mind it. He actually called it sweet and special. They brought different wines to not ruin their mood while Jinta looks at the frozen ice in worry, as he had brought a bottle with him to his flat. We hear the neighbor of Jinta shouting loudly to his daughter because he wanted to drink wine in the daylight and she was worried about him. The next day, Jinta was in his flat flicking some fire to get cozy and warm, and that was when Natsu was searching for him and finally opened the door to his flat and entered his flat before hearing his neighbor breaking some glass and shouting at his daughter to buy him more wine. She asked Jinta about it and he told her that his neighbor is like that all the time. He then asked him for what she needs and she told him that she wants a favor from him, which is to escort her to the pub, where Zenji hangs out at because he had stopped going to his job even after getting promoted recently, drinking wine all day and night, not caring about anything anymore. She was scared to go there on her own, so she wanted someone to protect her. Jinta agreed and followed her to that place. Natsu felt that place reeking with wine and almost puked but entered and found Zenji extremely drunk sitting in a corner. She started scolding him. But Zenji was different this time. He was cruel and harsh towards Natsu. He told her that she's alone and no one wants to date her because of her loud voice and she should fudge off. Jinta stepped inside and looked at him, telling him that he shouldn't be very rude towards her even if he was drunk. Zenji told Jinta that he shouldn't be shoving his nose in everything, and he never liked him to start with. Jinta told him that he was too drunk and he should stop drinking now or he will lose it forever. Zenji got mad and decided to throw a punch at Jinta, but Jinta dodged it and elbowed him in the tummy, making him fall to the floor and puke the wine out. Natsu felt worried over Zenji and bent over to check on him, but the men in the pub got so mad they wanted to take revenge from Jinta and one pulled out his sword wanting to kill Jinta. Jinta asked Natsu to close her eyes and he will finish them off quickly. They started charging towards him wanting to attack him, but he stopped him one after another while they throw the wine jars. He was solely afraid that some might hit Natsu and made sure to stop one of the bottles. Jinta didn't want to use his sword against them, but sudden, a sticker-like lightning object started floating around them and smacking their faces, knocking them out, while Jinta watches and smiles. When they were all out and done for, it appeared that Aketsu was standing there while Jinta turns around and thanks him for the help. Natsu took Zenji back to her place and she applied some cooling patches to his head and wanted to heal him. He got up and bent over and started over apologizing to her for how he treated her and how he was so cruel. She told him that she really is fine, and it was nothing, and she's not young anymore to not know the difference between someone drunk speaking and someone being for real. He turned his head to find his boss standing there and he turns around and bends over again to apologize again to him for being like this. The boss told him to be more careful and less of a joke. Later on, Aketsu was sitting in the flat with Jinta as he listens to their neighbor fighting with his daughter again. Jinta asks him for the reason he's there for, and Aketsu answers that he heard some rumors about someone killing his brother on dinner for no reason after buying some wine. It wouldn't be a problem if all of the cases he had heard about contained the word wine, especially the one called frozen ice. They went to investigate on it. Later at night they started walking and chatting about where to start with first. And that was when they found blood leaking out the wine store which had been selling frozen ice. They entered the store and found the seller dead and beat up and the whole store full of empty broken bottles and not a single full bottle. Aketsu started looking around, investigating and checking the shelves, but they felt something was fishy. He pulled his sword out while Aketsu calls for a spell, and they both killed 2 demons who appeared from nowhere. They both started fading and turning to ashes, wondering why they were here. And Jinta told him they're probably here seeking the wine's smell. They walked out of the store and Jinta looked at the sky, calling it ominous while it snows. Finally, we see a flower bleeding and the picture of blonde hair which refers to Suzune. The next day, Aketsu and Jinta were walking back to the restaurant after having a mild awful sleep caused by their loud shouting neighbor again. They walked back to the restaurant, and as they enter, they found 2 intruders, scaring UFO and yelling at the old guy. The 2 random dudes looked at Jinta and Aketsu and asked them if they searching for troubles, but Jinta didn't like their haircut and head-butted one of the guys in his head, chest, causing him to get knocked, and uppercuts the other. They looked like they were passed out, but suddenly they woke up like zombies and Aketsu had to interfere and flicked some oyster which froze time and gave the 2 punks some scene in their head, making Jinta look like a twink who was scared of them and started running out of the restaurant, which caused them to do the same as they run after something they actually hallucinate. Jinta asked him what he had shown them, but Aketsu refused to tell him for his own sake. Natsu peeked at Aketsu from behind the old man while scared of him, but he gave her a soft gesture. After that, Natsu sat down in front of Jinta and started giving him news about Zenji and how he's acting for now, telling him that he had been working all morning till dusk just because he knew her dad was going to fire him, and he had been drinking a lot in the past night. Jinta looked at her in worry while she tells him that she just wanted to give him heads up on his statue. She then got up and told them she was going to get some frozen ice for her dad to make him happy, but he told her to not do it because it's getting suspicious. Later on, Aketsu and Jinta walked to the bridge where Yutaka stands there waiting for him. She told him that she investigated about that wine he asked her about, and she doesn't know where is it made or how did it enter the village, but she knows that it came from some importer in there. He handed her a bag of coins and thanked her, and she wanted to add that there was this girl who kept visiting the importer's place often, and she was called the Pretty Blonde. Jinta was in shock and reacted an awkward way, but then apologized and decided to go back home with Aketsu. While Aketsu sleeps, he wakes up on their neighbor acting as if he lost the Fortnite championship and starts shouting at his daughter for some V-Bucks, and suddenly we hear walls breaking. They rushed out to see what was going on and found the father coming out of the house completely bulked up and ripped, probably been working out a lot. Jinta and Aketsu noticed that he had killed his daughter and suddenly charged towards them. They didn't take time to dodge his attack and Jinta slashed his arm and started sprinting behind him. He turns around you and tries to attack him again, but Jinta slashes his sword against his chest, slicing him open and causing death for him. Later on, Natsu went to her father's room and asked to talk with him. She asked if he's still mad at Zenji, and he told her that he's still disappointed at his acts and he expected better of him. Natsu asked him if he was going to forgive him, and told her that he can't decide that and only time can because he's still young and youth does more than this. They smiled while he drank more wine. Natsu asked him to stop drinking this much wine and he told her that wanted to get drunk with her for the night. Natsu told him that she got him some souvenirs of fresh drinks, but he told her that he will check it out later on. Now we see a scene of the wine seller is in terror, as he looks at Suzune who had paid him a visit offering him some wine. That makes people go white because it is right, and not black because there's no going back, telling him that they got some hateful emotions inside of them, like jealousy and pride. And just having these emotions can whiten their hearts just like ice, so that's why she's offering frozen ice. She's pretty good at marketing. She then disappeared and told him she will be waiting for him. The importer was entering his storehouse to check for the frozen ice bottles he had stored for the whole winter. He was so happy that he acquired all of it and is the only one who sells them to other sellers. Jinta and Aketsu decided to pay him a visit too, and he was shocked. Jinta reminded him of himself, telling him he was the one he had ordered and hired a few years ago to kill a boy demon who got him so troubled. The seller smiled at him and asked him why he was visiting him. Jinta told him that he got some questions and pulled his sword out. He asked him for the place he get his supplies, but the importer started lying about it and told him he got it from a special wine spring on top of a high mountain, calling it sacred. He then pushed the sword towards him, and he started telling him about the blonde female who told that this wine will emphasize hate inside people's hearts, and Jinta got mad. Aketsu told him that this was a foul act and they will destroy all the bottles and head to that mountain. Jinta was furious and started lifting the guy up, wanting to know more info about the blonde, but Aketsu stopped him and punched his face, telling him that he could kill him. Jinta apologized and agreed, thanking Aketsu for stopping him. The importer got mad and started drinking the wine, telling him that they won't take the wine from him and it's gonna be over his dead body. He started transforming into a giant demon and they ran out. Jinta held out his sword and started fighting with him, but his body was rock solid. His sword didn't even scratch him once. He tried slashing his sword at him again, but he received a punch to the chest which seemed to be stopped by some magical chest casted by Akatsu to protect him. Jinta was angry and rushed towards him trying to attack him again, but his body was so rough it wasn't even scratched after all the strikes he had received. Even Akatsu's bird did nothing to stop him. The demon tried attacking him again, but Jinta jumped backward, dodging his attack and kneeled down thinking of a way to defeat him as he speaks to Akatsu, telling him that this was all staged up. This wine was made by a demon to emphasize hate in hearts and make people turn into demons. And even the demon kid he had killed in the past was the man's project forcing him to try out the wine. Jinta was so angry at Suzune as Akatsu asked him who could that girl be with the blonde hair. He started getting flashbacks of Suzune. And then he stood up telling Akatsu they got no time because Natsu's father had been drinking frozen ice for the best few days and it could be fatal. Akatsu told Jinta to leave the demon for him, and Jinta was not sure if he would be able to defeat it. Akatsu told him not to underestimate him. He was so cool about it. Jinta thanked him and started rushing back to the town while Akatsu speaks to himself saying that he might fight Jinta one day, so he should not show him his winning card. Akatsu unleashed lightning causing a huge shape of an old emperor who had been possessed before to appear. He had kept his emotions in a sword to use him in lethal fights. The demon clashed with the emperor as they grabbed each other's hands interlocking until he gives the demon a punch and it replies back. Meanwhile, Jinta was rushing towards Natsu's house while her father kept drinking more of that wine and Jinta was in such a hurry wanting to rescue them both of it goes bad.